Marry Sophia tonight, or I'll take your casino, your harbor, and your family name. Victor Vong, the ruthless head of the family trust, warned. Before sunrise, Damian Vong, Macau's most powerful casino heir, would drop his engagement ring into the rain after seeing Amara Reed, the black forensic auditor he believed had betrayed him, protecting a 5-year-old boy with Damian's eyes and habits. The child was his secret son. The cracked casino chip in his hand concealed the key to a switched will, burned letters, and 5 years of lies. Would Damian sacrifice his entire empire to expose his own family and reclaim the son they stole from him? The tailor was kneeling at Damian Vong's feet when the call came from the harbor. One hand held the cuff of his black trousers, the other rested against a silver pin cushion strapped to her wrist. Around them, the private fitting room shone with gold light, mirrored walls, and expensive silence. Sofia de Carvalho stood near the window in an ivory dress that had not yet been finished. Her mother watched from a velvet chair. On the table between them sat a ring box, a contract folder, and a crystal glass of water no one had touched. Damian looked at the phone in Mateo Leal's hand. Mateo did not speak at once. That was what made Sophia turn. "What happened?" she asked. Mateo lowered his voice. "There is a problem at Pier 4. Damian kept his eyes on him. "What kind of problem?" "The customs seal on one of our bonded containers was broken before inspection. Port security says the paperwork came from our office." The tailor stopped moving. Sophia's mother looked toward the contract folder. The marriage agreement would bind Damian's casinos to the de Carvalho shipping network. By the end of the week, both companies would be tied together by shares, debt, and a promise neither of them mistook for love. Damian stepped away from the tailor. "Delay the signing." Sophia's mother rose. "The board is already waiting." "They can wait. Victor will use this." Damian picked up his coat from the back of a chair. "Victor uses everything." Sophia watched him cross the room. Her face did not change, but her fingers tightened around the unfinished seam at her hip. "The press arrives in less than an hour," she said. "I will be back." Neither of them believed it. Outside, rain had left the streets bright and dark at the same time. The car moved through Macau beneath towers of glass, casino signs, and hotel lights that made midnight look like a business decision. Damian sat in the rear seat while Mateo read from a tablet. "The container belongs to a subcontractor connected to Victor's logistics division," Mateo said. "If customs opens it before we control the record, the board may freeze the port agreement." "Who signed the release?" "Your authorization code was used." Damian turned his head. Mateo met his eyes in the reflection of the window. "You did not approve it." It was not a question. Damian looked back at the city. 5 years earlier, another document had carried his authorization. Another person had disappeared before he asked the right questions. He said nothing. At the harbor, cranes stood over the water like thin black machines waiting to move. Workers in reflective jackets crossed between stacked containers. The air smelled of salt, fuel, and wet metal. Somewhere beyond the security fence, a warning horn sounded once and stopped. The port director hurried toward Damian before the car door fully opened. "Mr. Vong, we contained the inspection team near the east gate. You delayed customs, only by 12 minutes. Then you did not contain them." The director swallowed. Damian walked toward Pier 4. Mateo kept pace beside him, speaking quietly about access logs and camera coverage. Security men followed several steps behind. No one at the harbor needed to be told who Damian was. Workers moved out of his path before they saw his face. He reached the inspection lane and looked toward the damaged container. Then a yellow backpack caught his attention. It was across the road, near a row of vending machines beside the ferry terminal. The color had faded unevenly, and one strap had been repaired with dark thread. A small boy stood beneath it, while a woman crouched in front of him, tying the loose lace of his worn blue shoe. Damian stopped. Matteo took 2 more steps before noticing. The woman's hair was pulled back. Rain had darkened the shoulders of her plain grey coat. She bent close to the child, shielding his hands from the wind while he held something between his fingers. Damian knew the shape before the object caught the light. A silver casino chip. One edge was cracked. The number 17 had been stamped into its center. For a moment, the harbor seemed to lose every sound except the water striking the concrete below the pier. The woman rose. She turned because the boy looked past her. Amara Reed saw Damian standing across the road. Her hand closed around the child's shoulder. 5 years did not disappear from her face. They remained in the caution around her eyes, in the way her body shifted between Damian and the boy, and in the single step she took backward without looking behind her. Damian forgot the container. He forgot the waiting board, the contract, the unfinished engagement dress, and the ring that had been chosen by 3 advisors because its stone photographed well under casino lights. The boy stared at him. He had Amara's mouth. He had her stillness. But his eyes were Damian's. Not only the color, the attention inside them. The boy looked at Damian the way Damian had looked at strangers as a child, as if trust were something that had to survive inspection before it could be offered. A ferry horn rolled across the water. Amara gripped the boy's hand. "Eli," she said softly. The name reached Damian through the traffic. The child lowered his gaze to the silver chip. He turned it once between his fingers, then again, then a 3rd time before placing it inside the pocket of his backpack. Damian felt the ring box slide from his hand. It struck the wet pavement, opened, and released the diamond ring into a shallow line of rainwater. Matteo looked down. The security men behind them became still. Across the road, Amara did not look at the ring. She looked at Damian. There was no surprise left in her face now, only fear. Damian stepped off the curb. Amara pulled Eli closer. Matteo reached for his arm, but stopped before touching him. "The shareholders are waiting," he said. Damian kept walking. "Cancel the meeting. Sir, if we do that today, Victor may take control of the port vote." Damian crossed the first lane, while a truck slowed between them. When it passed, Amara and the boy were already moving toward the terminal. Damian did not raise his voice. "Find out where she lives." Matteo looked at the child, then at the cracked silver chip disappearing beneath the yellow flap of the backpack. "And the engagement?" Damian watched Amara vanish into the crowd. "Cancel that too." Amara did not look back until the ferry terminal doors closed behind her. Eli's hand was small inside hers, but his grip had tightened enough to hurt. Around them, travelers moved beneath white lights with damp coats, rolling suitcases, and tired faces. No one knew the man standing outside could close half the harbor with one phone call. No one knew Amara had spent 5 years learning how to disappear from men like him. She guided Eli past the ticket counters and into a service corridor beside a closed bakery. The smell of old sugar and cleaning fluid hung in the air. "Did we miss the ferry?" he asked. "We are not taking one." "Then why are we here?" She crouched and pulled his hood forward. "Because I need you to stay close." Eli watched her. He did not ask who Damian was. That worried her more than a question would have. They left through a side exit and took a bus toward the old harbor district. Amara kept Eli away from the windows. Every time the bus stopped, she watched the doors before anyone stepped aboard. Their apartment was on the 4th floor of a narrow building above a repair shop. The stairwell smelled of cooking oil, rust, and rain trapped in concrete. One bulb flickered near the second landing. Another had burned out months earlier. Amara unlocked the door, waited, then opened it only wide enough to check the room. Nothing had moved. The apartment held 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, and a table beneath a cracked window. Eli's school drawings were taped above the sink. Unpaid bills sat beneath a chipped blue mug. His medicine rested beside them in a paper bag, folded twice at the top. Eli removed his yellow backpack and placed it on a chair. The silver chip clicked against the wooden seat. Amara looked at it. "Put that away." He touched the pocket. "You said it was lucky. I was wrong." His face changed into the careful stillness he used when he thought an adult might be frightened. Was that man the reason we came home early? Amara took off her wet coat and hung it over the door. "Pack your blue sweater. Are we going somewhere?" "Yes." "For how long?" She looked toward the bills. The rent was 6 days late. Eli's prescription had enough doses for less than a week. Her last bookkeeping client had paid half of what he owed, and the cash inside the kitchen tin would not cover another deposit in the city. "Just pack the sweater," she said. Eli did not move. "Mum," she turned. "Did I do something wrong?" The question entered the room more quietly than the rain. Amara crossed to him and placed both hands around his face. "No, none of this is because of you." "Then why do we always leave when people find us?" She could not answer without giving him a fear he did not yet know how to carry. Instead, she pressed her forehead to his. "Blue sweater," she whispered. He nodded. While he packed, Amara opened the cabinet above the refrigerator and removed a brown envelope. It contained their passports, Eli's birth certificate, his medical records, and $300 in mixed currency. Beneath the papers lay an old professional license with her photograph and the words "suspended pending investigation" stamped across the front. She turned it face down. Her phone vibrated on the counter. Unknown number. She let it ring. Across the city, Mateo sat alone in a records office beneath Vong Meridian's main casino. The room had no windows. Cold air moved from the vents and lifted the corners of documents stacked on a steel table. He had searched Amara's name through employment files, compliance reports, legal notices, and travel records. The same answer appeared again and again. No active record found. That was impossible. 5 years earlier, Amara Reed had worked inside the most protected financial division in the company. Her audits carried access codes that could not be deleted without approval from 2 executives and the archive administrator. Mateo opened the deletion history. The screen remained blank for several seconds. Then a single line appeared. The request had been authorized from Damian's office. Mateo leaned closer. The timestamp was wrong. On that date, Damian had been in Singapore, speaking at a gaming conference before hundreds of witnesses. His office terminal had been locked. Mateo knew because he had carried the keycard. He copied the record to an external drive. A shadow passed beneath the office door. Mateo stopped typing. Someone stood outside without entering. After a moment, the shadow moved away. At the apartment, Amara packed 2 shirts, Eli's medicine, and the blue mug, because he refused to drink warm milk from anything else. She left the unpaid electricity bill beneath a magnet on the refrigerator. There was no room for it in the bag, and no money to pay it. Eli came from the bedroom wearing his backpack. "Ready," he said. Amara reached for the door, then paused. A sound had come from the stairwell, not footsteps. A shoe shifting against concrete. She placed one finger against her lips. Eli became still. Amara moved toward the window and looked down through the rain-streaked glass. A black sedan waited across from the repair shop with its lights off. A man stood beneath the awning, pretending to study his phone. His shoes were dry. He had been there before the rain began. Amara stepped away from the window. She took Eli's hand, lifted the packed bag, and moved toward the fire stairs behind the kitchen. This time, when they left, she did not lock the door. 5 years earlier, Amara Reed first saw Damian Vong beneath the amber lights of the private gaming floor. She was standing behind a velvet rope with a thin audit folder pressed against her ribs. Around her, dealers moved cards across green felt with the quiet precision of surgeons. Crystal glasses touched marble. Gold watches flashed when men lifted their hands. The room smelled of tobacco, polished wood, and the faint citrus oil used on the tables after closing. No one had invited her to belong there. Her temporary badge carried the word compliance in small black letters. To the floor managers, that made her less important than a guest and more irritating than a guard. She had already been asked twice whether she was lost. The third time came from a man named Felix Ho, the senior manager for high-value accounts. "You cannot stand here," he said. Amara looked at the table beyond him. "I am observing the redemption sequence." Felix smiled without warmth. "You are blocking service." "I am standing against a wall." His smile thinned. At table 17, a dealer pushed a stack of silver chips toward a man in a blue suit. The man had lost for nearly an hour, yet his account showed a credit larger than the amount he had brought to the table. Amara had noticed the pattern that morning. Losses at the table, refunds at the cage, payments routed through 3 guest accounts. Each transaction looked ordinary when viewed alone. Together, they formed a circle. She opened the folder. Felix placed 2 fingers on its cover. "Do not create a problem in front of our clients." Amara lowered her eyes to his hand. Then she looked back at him. "Remove your fingers." The dealer at table 17 stopped counting. A waiter slowed beside the champagne cart. 2 security officers turned their heads without moving their feet. Felix withdrew his hand. "You were brought here to verify totals," he said. "Not to question judgment. The totals are wrong." His voice remained soft. "You should be careful with words like that." Amara glanced toward the blue-suited guest. "You should be careful with refunds that repeat every 47 minutes. The room changed, not loudly. One dealer looked down at the felt. A cashier behind the glass booth stopped typing. Felix's face stayed calm, but his left thumb began rubbing the edge of his cuff. That was when Damian arrived. He did not enter with an announcement. People noticed him in pieces. A guard straightened. A host stepped away from a guest. The casino director lowered his voice before Damian came fully into view. He wore a dark suit and no tie. His expression gave nothing away. Felix turned toward him. "Mr. Vong, there is a misunderstanding." Damian looked at Amara first. Her badge was crooked. One corner of her folder had softened from being held too tightly. She had been standing there long enough for the air conditioning to leave a pale line of cold across her knuckles. "What misunderstanding?" he asked. Felix answered quickly. "The auditor believes a legitimate client refund is fraudulent." Damian shifted his gaze to the table. "Does she?" Amara did not explain herself at once. She walked to the edge of the velvet rope and pointed to 3 chip trays. The guest bought in through account Quan. He received promotional credit through account Lao. His losses were reimbursed through account Chen. All 3 accounts use the same travel agent, the same emergency contact, and the same private car. Felix gave a short laugh. "Those are common arrangements for premium guests. The signatures are not." Damian looked at her. Amara opened the folder and showed him the forms. The pressure changes at the same place in every signature. Same pause, same hand, different names. Felix folded his arms. "Handwriting is not proof." "No," Amara said. "The camera timestamp is." The casino director looked toward the ceiling. Damian remained still. "What will it show?" "The guest never entered the cage during the first 2 refunds. Someone processed them while he was still seated at this table." Felix's thumb stopped moving. Damian turned to the security chief. "Pull the footage." They reviewed it in a room behind the gaming floor. No one offered Amara a chair. The first recording showed the guest at table 17. The second showed a cashier entering his code. The third showed Felix standing behind the cashier, close enough to speak into her ear. The refund had been approved while the guest's hands were visible on the table. Damian watched the footage twice. Felix began with confidence. "There may have been an administrative correction." No one answered. He tried again. "We handle important clients with discretion." Damian paused the image on Felix's hand resting beside the terminal. "Discretion is not permission." Felix looked around the room and found no one willing to meet his eyes. Amara closed her folder. She did not smile. Damian noticed that. Later, after security escorted Felix from the floor, Damian found her near the cashier cage. She was writing down the serial number of a damaged chip that had been removed from circulation. "You were right," he said. Amara kept writing. The records were right. Most people would enjoy that moment. Most people were not told to stay quiet before the money disappeared. He studied her for a moment. Then he picked up the damaged chip. It was silver, stamped with the number 17, and cracked along one edge. "It cannot be redeemed," he said. "I know." He held it out to her. "Then no one here can tell you what it is worth." Amara looked at the chip, then at him. She accepted it because refusing would have made the moment larger than she wanted. The metal felt cold in her palm. Behind them, table 17 reopened under fresh lights, as if nothing had happened. But something had. For the first time inside Vong Meridian, Damian had looked at Amara without looking past her. The first sign that something had changed came with the black ribbons tied around the entrance of Vong Meridian. The founder had died before dawn. By noon, every screen inside the casino carried his portrait. Dealers wore dark bands around their sleeves. Senior executives moved through the building with lowered voices and urgent folders. Guests continued to gamble beneath the chandeliers, but the staff had begun watching the elevators. Power was changing floors. Amara stood in the compliance archive, with a stack of trust records open before her. The room was colder than the gaming floor, and nearly silent, except for the soft turning of paper. Outside, the company was preparing a memorial. Inside, she was trying to understand why a document signed 3 weeks earlier had been printed on paper that did not exist until the following month. She checked the watermark again, then the embossed seal. The seal belonged to a notary office that had moved locations before the stated signing date. The address pressed into the page was the new one. That should have been impossible. She placed the document beside an older copy of the founder's will. The signatures looked similar from a distance, but the final stroke leaned too sharply to the right. The pressure on the first letter was heavier. Someone had practiced the shape without understanding the hand. Amara heard the archive door open. Felix Ho no longer worked for the company, but his replacement had learned the same habit of entering rooms without knocking. Victor Vong stepped inside. He was older than Damian, with silver at his temples and a face built for patient concern. He wore mourning black, without appearing touched by grief. "You are working during the memorial," he said. "I was asked to reconcile the trust accounts." "By whom?" "The audit schedule." Victor glanced at the pages. "The schedule can wait." Amara placed one hand over the addendum. "This document cannot." His expression did not change. "What is wrong with it?" "The printing date does not match the signing date. Neither does the notary address." Victor walked closer. His eyes moved across the page, then settled on her hand. "You have been in this department for less than a year. Paper does not become older because someone senior approves it." A faint pause entered the room. Victor looked toward the camera in the corner. "The family is grieving," he said. "This is not the time for accusations. I did not make one. You were about to." Amara held his gaze. "I was about to request the original." Victor smiled, though nothing in his face softened. "The original is under family protection. Then the trust should be frozen until an independent review is completed." He reached for the document. Amara did not move her hand. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Victor lowered his voice. "You should think carefully about what belongs to your position." Amara looked at the ring on his smallest finger. The founder had worn one like it, carved with the old family crest. Victor's was newer. The gold had not yet softened at the edges. My position requires me to report material discrepancies. Your position exists because this family allows it." He took the page after she released it. When he left, the room seemed colder. Amara waited until the elevator carried him away. Then she photographed the watermark, the seal, and the signature. She copied the file reference onto a narrow strip of paper and folded it into the lining of her wallet. Her phone vibrated. A message from the clinic appeared on the screen. The blood test was positive. Amara sat down. For a moment, the archive disappeared. The cold air, the false signature, the locked cabinets, and Victor's warning all moved beyond reach. She placed one hand against her stomach, though there was nothing yet to feel. Damian was in Hong Kong meeting investors. He had called the previous night and left a message asking why she had sounded distracted. She listened to it again. His voice was calm, tired, familiar. She opened a new message. "There is something I need to tell you when you return." She stopped before sending it. Then she added another line. "I found a problem in the family trust. Do not speak to anyone about it until you see the documents." She pressed send. The message showed delivered. An hour later, it disappeared from the conversation. Amara stared at the screen. She sent it again. This time, it failed. At the executive terminal upstairs, a security administrator opened a private filtering program and moved her name into a restricted list. Amara did not see that. What she saw was Damian's silence. By evening, the memorial hall had filled with flowers, cameras, and men who spoke of loyalty while calculating votes. Damian returned shortly before the service began. Amara saw him across the marble lobby, surrounded by directors and legal advisors. She started toward him. Victor stepped into her path. "Mr. Vong is not available. I need 5 minutes. You no longer have access to him." Amara looked past Victor. Damian turned at that moment, but a board member drew his attention toward the press line. Victor handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was a notice of suspension. The document accused her of copying protected financial records and transferring confidential information to an outside account. At the bottom was Damian's electronic authorization. Amara read it twice. The lobby continued around her. A photographer adjusted his lens. An assistant carried white lilies toward the memorial wall. Somewhere near the entrance, a dealer she knew saw the paper in her hands and looked away. "This is false," Amara said. Victor's voice remained gentle. "Then cooperate." She looked at Damian again. He was close enough to see, too far away to hear. Victor lowered his head, as if offering sympathy. "Security will escort you to your office." Amara folded the suspension notice once, then again. Inside her wallet, the narrow strip of paper pressed against the photograph of the cracked silver chip. She had planned to tell Damian he was going to be a father. No one stopped her. No one asked whether the signature was real. Instead, she walked past him, carrying an accusation signed with his name. Security walked Amara through the compliance floor after midnight. No one touched her. That made it worse. The guards stayed half a step behind while employees pretended to study their screens. A printer continued feeding paper into an empty tray. Someone closed a drawer too quickly. The elevator opened, and everyone moved aside without looking at her. Her office had already been searched. The cabinet stood open. Her computer displayed a notice stating that her access had been revoked pending criminal review. Beside the keyboard sat a cardboard box containing a coffee mug, 2 pens, and the small plant Damian had once said would never survive the air conditioning. Amara looked at the box. "This is not everything. We were told these were your personal items. My wallet was in the top drawer." He hesitated. That was enough. She crossed the room, opened the drawer, and found it empty. The strip of paper bearing the file reference was gone. So was the photograph of the cracked silver chip. Only the chip itself remained in her coat pocket. She closed her fingers around it. The silver chip pressed cold against her palm, At the security desk downstairs, a legal officer asked her to sign a statement confirming that she had removed confidential material. Amara read every line. "I will not sign this." The officer lowered his voice. "Refusal will be recorded." "Record it accurately." Rain had started. Her company phone stopped working before she reached the curb. Her bank card failed at the first cash machine. By morning, an internal notice had been sent to every major gaming company in Macau, warning that she was under investigation for financial misconduct. By afternoon, the story had changed. She was no longer an auditor who had found a discrepancy. She was a woman who had copied files, approached a rival operator, and accepted payment through an offshore account. The payment existed. Amara discovered it when a frozen account statement was delivered to her apartment. $200,000 had been deposited under her name, then transferred before she could touch it. The signature authorizing the account was hers. Almost. The curve of the final letter leaned too far right. She took the statement to the police. The officer behind the desk looked at the amount, then at her coat, then at her address. "You expect me to believe someone gave you this money without your knowledge? I expect you to check the timestamps." He placed the paper aside. "You should speak to your employer." "My employer signed the accusation." The officer's expression softened into the patience reserved for people already judged unreasonable. Amara left without the statement. That evening, a lawyer representing the Vong family arrived at her apartment. He wore a navy suit and carried no visible file. He spoke politely in the hallway, as if they were discussing a contract renewal. "You are free to contest the allegations," he said. "However, the company will pursue theft, fraud, and unlawful disclosure. I did not do any of those things. That will be for the court." He glanced toward the kitchen, where an unopened clinic envelope rested beside the sink. Then he looked back at her. "If there are personal circumstances that might complicate the matter, you should understand that the Vong family has significant legal interests in succession." "What are you saying?" "I am saying a child connected to that family would not be treated as an ordinary private matter." The clinic envelope seemed visible from every corner. The lawyer adjusted one cuff. "You can remain and face prosecution, or leave before formal charges are filed." "Is this from Damian?" "The authorization carries his name." Amara closed the door in his face. She left Macau 3 days later with one suitcase, the silver chip, and less than $400 in cash. Before boarding the ferry, she wrote Damian a letter. She told him about the pregnancy. She told him the trust document was false. She told him she had not taken the money. At the end, she wrote only one accusation. "You believed paper before you believed me." She sent the letter to his private residence. Victor's office received it first. An assistant opened the envelope, copied the first page, and placed the original in a metal tray. The flame caught near Damian's name. Within seconds, the words about the child folded inward and turned black. In Hong Kong, Damian received a different package. It contained photographs of Amara entering a bank, records of the offshore account, and a travel booking under another man's name. The images had been arranged to tell a complete story. Too complete. Mateo noticed the bank photograph had no visible date. He noticed the transfer approval used an office code that should have expired months earlier. He said nothing. Damian read the file alone. He called Amara's number. It had been disconnected. He sent a letter to the address listed in her personnel record. It was returned unopened. He sent another through a private courier. Victor's security office intercepted it. The third letter was not returned. Damian believed it had reached her. It had not. For the first year, Amara wrote every month. She mailed letters from borrowed rooms, temporary jobs, and clinics where she waited beneath fluorescent lights with one hand over her stomach. She told Damian when the baby first moved. She told him when the doctor warned that stress had raised her blood pressure. She told him when their son was born, with a serious expression, and a grip stronger than expected. None of the letters reached him. For the first year, Damian searched through lawyers, investigators, and databases controlled by the same people who had erased her. Each report returned with the same conclusion. Amara Reed had taken the money and chosen not to be found. By the second year, she stopped writing. By the third, Damian stopped asking for daily updates. By the fourth, Eli had begun carrying the cracked silver chip in his pocket because it calmed him during storms. By the fifth, Damian agreed to marry Sofia de Carvalho, not because he had forgotten Amara, because he had learned to treat absence as an answer. Then Matteo found the letter. It was hidden inside an old legal archive under the wrong case number. The envelope had never been opened, but the paper carried a faint brown mark along one edge, as if it had once rested beside a flame. On the front, in Damian's handwriting, were 6 words: "Please let me hear the truth." Damian reached the old harbour district before sunrise. The street was still wet from the night rain. Matteo had traced Amara's address through a school registration form filed under Eli Reed. She had not returned to Macau for Damian. She had returned because Eli needed treatment at a children's clinic near the harbour. The building stood above a repair shop with a rusted sign and broken fans stacked beside the entrance. Damian looked up at the 4th floor. 2 security men waited near the car. "Stay here," Damian said. Matteo watched the doorway. "We do not know who else found her. That is why you stay." Damian entered alone. The stairwell smelled of oil, damp concrete, and old cooking smoke. A bulb flickered above the second landing. The door to Amara's apartment was not fully closed. He touched it with 2 fingers. It moved inward. The room beyond was small and nearly empty. A chipped blue mug stood beside the sink. School drawings had been removed from the wall. A chair had fallen near the table. Damian entered without calling her name. He noticed the open cabinet first, then the missing clothes. Then a narrow streak of mud leading from the kitchen toward the fire stairs. Someone had searched the apartment after Amara left. The search had been fast, careless, and certain that the people living there would never be allowed to return safely. He crossed the room and found a photograph beneath the table. Eli stood outside a school, holding the cracked silver chip against his chest. Amara knelt beside him, one hand resting on his shoulder. Damian picked it up. The apartment door closed behind him. "Put it down." Amara stood near the entrance with Eli behind her. She held no weapon, but her body had turned into one. Her shoulders were still. Her hand remained close to the boy's chest. Damian placed the photograph on the table. "You came back. You followed us. I came alone." She looked toward the hall. "Men like you are never alone." Eli watched Damian from behind her coat. His yellow backpack hung from one shoulder. The silver chip rested inside the front pocket, visible through a torn seam. Damian looked at the boy. Amara moved slightly. "Do not." "I only looked at him. That was enough 5 years ago." The words landed quietly. Damian did not defend himself. "I found a letter," he said. Her expression changed. "Which one?" "One I sent. I never received it." "I know. No. You know now." Eli looked from one face to the other. Damian lowered his voice. "I was told you took the money, and I was told you signed the charges. My authorization was used. Your name was enough." Damian looked at the folded electricity bill. "You are leaving again." "Yes. Because of me? Because someone watched this building last night? Because my employment record was erased? Because a lawyer once told me your family could take my child and call it succession?" Damian's jaw tightened. "That is the first honest reaction I have seen from you," she said. "I did not send that lawyer. You did not stop him. I did not know. That sentence has protected powerful men for a very long time." Eli stepped forward before Amara could stop him. He looked at Damian's wrist. Damian wore the same old watch he had owned 5 years earlier. Its face carried a crest shaped like the mark stamped into the silver chip. Eli pulled the chip from his backpack. "Why do you have the same picture?" Amara closed her eyes for a second. Damian crouched, but kept several feet between them. "It belonged to my family." Eli held the chip tighter. "Mum said this one did not belong to anyone." She was right. The boy studied him. "Are you the man from the letters?" The room became still. Damian looked at Amara. "What letters?" he asked. "The ones Mum stopped writing." Amara placed a hand on Eli's shoulder. "Go wait in the kitchen." "I am already in the kitchen." For the first time, pain crossed Damian's face. Eli saw it. "Are you my father?" Damian did not answer quickly. "I may be." Eli frowned. "That sounds like something adults say when they are afraid." "Yes." Eli turned the chip 3 times between his fingers. "Do you want to be my father?" he asked. "Or do you only want to prove I belong to you?" Damian did not have an answer that would not sound like power. Amara spoke first. "If there is a test, it will be done by an independent clinic. My lawyer chooses the laboratory. Nothing is released to your company. Nothing is released to the press. You do not approach his school. You do not send security near him. You do not ask for custody." Damian stood. "Agreed. You agreed too quickly. I should have believed you more quickly." She looked toward the window. A black sedan had stopped across the street. The engine remained running. A man in a grey coat stood beneath the awning below. His shoes were dry. Damian's face changed. He crossed to the door and opened it. Matteo was already climbing the stairs. "There is someone outside," Damian said. "I saw him." A knock sounded from below. 3 measured strikes. Then a voice called Amara's name. Matteo looked through the stairwell railing. "Courier." "No courier comes before sunrise," Amara said. The voice called again. This time it added Eli's name. Damian stepped between the stairs and the apartment. "Take them through the fire exit." Matteo moved toward Amara. She did not move. "I am not going anywhere with your people." Damian looked at her. "Then go with the man who found you before I did." The knocking stopped. An envelope slid beneath the building entrance. Matteo went down, retrieved it, and returned without opening it. The seal belonged to the Vong family trust. Amara read the first line through the plastic window. Notice of protective claim regarding an unverified heir. Eli could not read the words from where he stood. He only saw his mother's face. "Are they taking us somewhere?" Amara folded the envelope against her palm. Damian looked at the boy. "No," he said. This time, he did not sound afraid. Matteo did not open the envelope until they were inside the car. Damian sat beside Amara in the rear seat. Eli remained between them. The silver chip rested. He turned it once, then stopped before the second turn, as if he had noticed Damian watching. Matteo unfolded the notice. Victor had asked the family court to place the boy under temporary protection while his identity was examined. The filing described Amara as financially unstable, professionally discredited, and likely to leave Macau without notice. Every sentence had been written to sound reasonable. That was what made it dangerous. Amara read the final page and handed it back. "They are not asking to protect him," she said. "They are asking to control where I can take him." Damian looked at Matteo. "Who filed it?" "The Family Trust Council." "On whose authority?" Matteo did not answer immediately. Amara noticed. "You know," she said. Matteo folded the document along its original crease. "I know who had access." "That is not the same thing." "No." The car moved through the waking city. Delivery trucks crowded the narrow streets. Workers lifted metal shutters from shop fronts. Inside the car, Matteo held 5 years of silence between both hands. Damian told the driver to take them to a medical clinic outside the gaming district. The laboratory had no contracts with Vong Meridian and no financial relationship with the family trust. Amara checked both facts herself. The nurse collected the samples in separate rooms. Eli returned with cotton taped to his arm. "Did you cry?" Amara asked. "No," the nurse smiled. "He asked to see the label before I sealed it." Eli climbed into the chair beside his mother. "You always check labels." Amara adjusted the edge of the cotton pad. "Labels matter." Across the room, Damian watched her hands. He remembered another pair of documents, another moment when she had told him something did not match, and the people around him had made her disappear before he understood what she had seen. Matteo stood near the door. When Damian looked at him, Matteo lowered his eyes. The samples were sealed, witnessed, and sent to an independent laboratory. Amara photographed every seal. The clinic director signed each transfer record. Only then did she agree to leave. Damian arranged a temporary apartment. Amara rejected the first building because the security desk reported to one of his subsidiaries. She rejected the second because the lease placed Damian as guarantor. The third apartment belonged to the clinic foundation. She accepted it for 3 nights, not as a gift, as documented emergency housing. That afternoon, Matteo returned to the records office beneath the casino. He locked the door behind him and removed the external drive from his coat. The authorization logs opened slowly. Some had been damaged, others had been replaced with clean copies containing no deletion history. He began with the suspension order issued against Amara. Damian's electronic signature appeared at the bottom. Matteo compared the authentication token with travel records from the same day. Damian had entered a conference hall in Singapore minutes before the order was approved in Macau. The terminal listed as the source belonged to Damian's private office. Matteo had carried the only physical keycard. He remembered the day clearly. Victor had asked him to bring the card to the executive floor because Damian's office needed to be inspected after a security alarm. Matteo had handed it to the head of internal security and left for the airport. He had never asked for the incident report. He found it now. The report claimed the alarm had been triggered by a cleaning sensor. No technician had signed the inspection. No camera footage had been attached. Matteo searched the archive backups. A single corridor camera had survived under the wrong date. The recording showed Victor entering Damian's office with the security chief. 7 minutes later, the suspension order against Amara was approved. Matteo sat back. The proof did not surprise him. His own face in the recording did. He appeared at the edge of the frame, handing over the keycard. For 5 years, he had told himself that he had suspected nothing certain. He had told himself that doubt was not evidence and loyalty required patience. The recording showed something simpler. He had opened the door. Damian entered the office without warning. Matteo paused the video. Neither man spoke for several seconds. On the screen, Victor accepted the keycard from a younger version of Matteo. "You knew there was a problem," Damian said. Matteo kept his hands on the desk. "I knew the process was wrong. And you said nothing. I told myself Victor was protecting the company. You told yourself what protected you." Matteo looked at him then. Yes. The answer removed the possibility of anger doing useful work. Damian turned toward the frozen image. "Why now?" "Because there is a child inside the same machine, and this time I can see what the machine is doing." Damian's voice lowered. "You could see it then." Matteo did not defend himself. "I was afraid of losing my position." "And she lost everything." "Yes." Matteo opened another file. It contained the access history for Amara's employment record, the false offshore account, the intercepted correspondence, and the trust archive. The same administrator code appeared across all 4 systems. The code belonged to Victor's office. A message arrived on Damian's phone. The laboratory results were ready. They returned to the clinic before sunset. Amara read the report first. Her face remained still until she reached the final line. Then she placed the pages on the table and rested one hand over Eli's backpack. "Damian, did not touch the report. He looked at her. "May I read it?" She pushed it toward him. The probability of paternity was greater than all reasonable doubt. Damian read the sentence twice. Eli sat near the window, drawing a harbor crane with a blue pencil. He did not know that a laboratory had just connected him to one of the most powerful families in Macau. He only knew the adults had become quiet again. "So it is true?" he asked. Damian looked at him. "Yes." Eli considered the answer, then held up the drawing. "Does that mean you know how cranes work?" A sound almost became laughter in Amara's throat, but stopped before it escaped. Damian moved closer, without crossing the space she had set between them. "No," he said, "but I can learn." Mateo's phone vibrated. He read the alert and turned the screen toward Damian. The family trust had amended its petition. Victor was no longer requesting temporary review. He was demanding immediate recognition of Eli as the first direct heir of the next generation. In the archive beneath the casino, a dormant file marked with the number 17 opened automatically. A warning appeared across the screen. "Successor verification required. Independent audit mandatory." The warning appeared on 3 screens at once. Mateo saw it first in the archive, beneath the casino. Damian saw it on the tablet in his hand. Amara saw it when the clinic director turned the monitor toward them and asked whether the family trust had always used automatic succession controls. No one answered. The message remained on the screen. "Successor verification required. Independent audit mandatory." Amara read the words twice. Victor had demanded recognition of Eli because he believed the boy would strengthen the family claim. Instead, the filing had activated a safeguard hidden inside the trust. Damian looked at Mateo. "What does file 17 contain?" "I do not know." Amara did. Not the answer, but the pattern. She reached into Eli's backpack and removed the cracked silver chip. The metal had warmed from his hand. She turned it over and traced the narrow line stamped beneath the number. A letter followed the number. Not part of the chip design. A storage code. "Your grandfather did not organize family records by date," she said. "He used table numbers." Mateo frowned. "Why?" "Because dates could be changed. Table numbers meant something only to him." Damian watched her face. "And 17. The trust account connected to the next generation." Mateo opened the old archive index. Most entries used legal names and filing dates. A smaller set carried gaming references instead. Table 4, Room 9, Cage 12. Table 17 appeared once. The record showed no document title, only a monthly storage charge paid to a private warehouse near the inner harbor. The payments had continued for years through a dormant maintenance account no one had closed after the founder's death. Amara pointed to the final column. "The charge increased 6 months before he died. For additional space?" Damian asked. "No, for controlled access." Mateo called the warehouse. The manager refused to discuss the account without the original access token. Eli looked at the chip in Amara's hand. "Maybe that is the token." The adults turned toward him. He shrugged. "It has the same number." Amara examined the cracked edge. Something dark sat inside the split, too straight to be dirt. Mateo brought a narrow tool from the clinic maintenance kit and eased the metal apart. A paper strip had been pressed into the hollow center. The ink had faded, but the warehouse address and a handwritten authorization phrase were still visible. Damian did not touch it. His grandfather had hidden the key inside a worthless chip, then allowed the casino to discard it. The only reason it had survived was because Damian had once given it to a woman the family had later driven away. They left the clinic through a service entrance. Amara refused Damian's armored car. They used a vehicle registered to the clinic foundation, with Mateo driving and no family security in sight. Eli sat beside his mother and watched cranes move above the harbor. The warehouse stood behind a row of marine supply shops. Its walls were stained by salt and exhaust. Inside, metal fans pushed warm air through aisles of numbered cages. The manager was an elderly woman with clear glasses and a red thread tied around one wrist. She read the authorization phrase without expression. Then she looked at Damian. "You came late. Did you know my grandfather?" "I knew he paid on time." She led them to a locked room at the back of the building. 2 cameras faced the door. A mechanical seal covered the handle. The manager checked the seal number against a paper ledger. "Digital records can be rewritten," she said. He preferred ink. Amara looked at Damian. His grandfather had trusted the same weakness she had once been punished for noticing. The room contained a narrow steel cabinet. Inside was one black document box. No gold crest, no family name, only a white label marked Table 17. Matteo photographed the seal before breaking it. The box held trust ledgers, notary receipts, and a recording device wrapped in cloth. Beneath them lay a certified copy of the founder's final addendum. Amara read the first page standing up. Victor Vong had been appointed temporary administrator of 15% of the family voting trust. His authority would end when a direct heir of the next generation was legally verified. At that moment, the trust would enter independent supervision. Every transaction made during Victor's administration would be audited. Damian read the final clause. No heir could be used to transfer custody, guardianship, or personal control to the trust. Eli's inheritance rights could not be turned into ownership of Eli. Amara lowered the document. For the first time since the legal notice arrived, her shoulders eased, only slightly. Matteo continued through the box. "There is no original will. There does not need to be," Amara said. "This copy has the external notary seal, and the ledger proves when it was deposited." A sound came from the corridor, metal against metal. The warehouse manager turned toward the door. "No one else has access today." The lights went out. Eli's breath caught. Amara reached for him before the darkness fully settled. Damian moved between them and the door. Matteo switched on his phone light, keeping it low. A second sound followed. The mechanical seal was being cut from the outside. Damian spoke quietly. "Take the documents." Matteo slid the certified copy and ledger into a waterproof folder. Amara removed the recording device. The manager opened a narrow maintenance panel behind the cabinet. "This passage reaches the loading yard." The door handle moved. Eli held the silver chip so tightly that its cracked edge marked his palm. Damian saw it and crouched. "Keep that safe." Eli looked at the door. "Are those your people?" "No." "How do you know?" "Mine would knock." The boy considered that, then placed the chip inside his shoe. The door shook under a heavy strike. Matteo entered the maintenance passage first. Amara guided Eli behind him. Damian waited until they were through. The lock tore loose. 2 men in dark coats entered as Damian pulled the panel shut. The passage was narrow and hot. Pipes ran along the ceiling. Behind them, footsteps crossed the storage room. They reached the loading yard as rain began again. Matteo called the independent audit authority before calling company security. He read the seal number, the warehouse account, and the first line of the clause into the recorded emergency channel. The evidence now existed outside Vong Meridian. It could no longer disappear inside the family. Across the yard, a black sedan turned through the gate. Amara held Eli close. Damian looked at the certified copy in Matteo's hands. For the first time, the family's oldest protection had begun working against the man controlling it. Victor had spent 5 years protecting his control of the trust. By recognizing Eli, he had opened the one file capable of taking it away. By noon, Amara's face was on every business channel in Macau. The first report called her a former employee under investigation. The second called her the mother of Damian Vong's secret child. By the third, the story had hardened into something cleaner and crueler. A disgraced auditor had returned with a boy and a claim. No one mentioned the forged suspension order. No one mentioned the trust clause. No one asked why Victor Vong had moved so quickly to recognize a child he had never met. The Clinic Foundation relocated Amara and Eli to a private apartment above a rehabilitation center near the outer harbor. The building had no connection to Vong Meridian. Its windows faced the water instead of the casinos. That was the only reason she agreed to enter. Damian arrived an hour later with Mateo and 2 sealed evidence cases. He left his security team outside the district. Amara watched him place the cases on the kitchen table. "You brought the documents here. The audit authority has copies. That does not answer me. The originals cannot remain inside the company. They cannot remain beside my son either." Damian looked toward the bedroom. Eli was sitting on the floor with his blue pencil and a sheet of clinic paper, drawing cranes from memory. "You are right," Damian said. The absence of argument made Amara angrier than resistance would have. Mateo carried the cases into a locked office on the ground floor. An independent investigator signed for them. Every seal was photographed. Every timestamp was witnessed. Outside, the damage moved faster. Vong Meridian shares fell before the market closed. 3 lenders requested emergency meetings. A foreign partner paused a licensing agreement. Employees began receiving messages warning that delayed payroll might follow if the port deal collapsed. Victor spoke to the press from the steps of the family headquarters. He wore a black suit and the expression of a man burdened by duty. "This is not a dispute about money," he said. "It is about protecting a child from being used in a private conflict." Amara watched the statement on a muted television. Victor's mouth moved beneath the caption, "Mother linked to past fraud investigation." Eli came into the room, carrying the silver chip. "Why is your picture there?" Amara switched off the screen. "Because people are saying things before they know the truth." "Can they do that?" "Yes." "Why?" She looked at Damian. He had no answer that belonged in a child's hands. Eli turned the chip once. "Did you do something bad?" "No," Damian said. The boy looked at him. Damian continued. "But people with power allowed others to say she did." Amara's eyes moved toward him. He did not look away. Across the city, Sofia de Carvalho stood in her father's office, while 3 lawyers explained what would happen if she refused to continue the engagement. The port company carried more debt than the public knew. Victor had arranged short-term financing through 2 banks connected to the family trust. If the marriage agreement failed, the loans could be called within days. Her father placed both hands on the desk. "This is larger than Damian." "It was always larger than Damian," Sophia said. "Then act like you understand." On the desk lay the ivory dress-fitting schedule, the shareholder agreement, and a list of 12,000 employees whose jobs depended on cargo moving through the port. Sophia touched the corner of the agreement. What happens to them after Victor controls both companies? Her father did not answer. That silence was new. Sophia opened the financing annex. One clause allowed the trust to convert unpaid debt into voting shares. Another allowed Victor to appoint an emergency director if the wedding was delayed beyond the end of the week. She read the pages again. The marriage had never been designed to save her family's company. It had been designed to absorb it. That evening, Damian joined a board call from the apartment kitchen. Amara could hear voices through the closed door. One director demanded that he deny paternity. Another suggested paying Amara to leave Macau. A third told him to complete the engagement first and resolve the child privately. Damian listened until they stopped speaking. Then he said, "No." The word was quiet. The call ended 6 minutes later. When he came out, Eli had fallen asleep at the table, with his head resting beside the blue mug. The cracked chip lay beneath one hand. Amara was sorting medication into a small plastic box. Damian looked at the labels. "What does he take?" She closed the lid. "You do not get 5 years in one night." "I know." He has asthma when the air turns damp. He hates loud hand dryers. He will pretend he is not hungry if he thinks food costs too much. He checks doors twice because we have left too many rooms quickly. Damian sat across from her. I did that to him. Not alone. That does not reduce it. The harbor lights moved across the ceiling. For a while, neither of them spoke. Damian reached toward the chip, then stopped before touching it. Why did you let him carry it? Because when he was a baby, storms frightened him. I gave him something cold to hold. He stopped crying. He still turns it 3 times. Yes, my mother taught me that. Amara's hands became still. She said 3 turns meant you had checked every side of a problem. She said fear became smaller when it had edges. Eli shifted in his sleep. His fingers closed around the chip. The moment might have softened something if Matteo had not entered. He carried a tablet and looked as though he had forgotten how to remove tension from his face. The warehouse copy is valid, he said. The notary ledger confirms the addendum was deposited before the founder died. Amara stood. Then why do you look like that? Because the court requires the original for immediate suspension of Victor's voting authority. Damian rose. The original was held in the family archive. Matteo placed the tablet on the table. Security footage showed a clerk opening the archive vault before dawn. The next recording had been erased. The inventory log had been altered. The envelope containing the original addendum was gone. Who had access? Amara asked. Victor, the archive director, and the head of family security. Damian looked toward the dark window. Without the original, the independent audit could continue, but Victor would retain control long enough to force the port vote and challenge Amara's custody in court. Matteo opened another file. There is more. A payment had been issued from the trust to a private aviation company. Departure was scheduled for the following night. The passenger list was sealed. Only one special request appeared in the booking: medical clearance for a child. No destination appeared on the form. Sophia stood before the mirror, while 2 seamstresses adjusted the engagement dress around her. The ivory fabric had been cut to photograph well beneath casino lights. Tiny stones lined the shoulders, each bright enough to catch a camera flash. Her mother sat near the window with a tablet open to the final guest list. Outside, the harbor disappeared beneath afternoon haze. No one mentioned that Damian had cancelled the fitting. No one mentioned the woman on the news. A seamstress pulled the waist tighter. Sophia lifted one hand. Stop. The woman froze. Her mother looked up. We do not have time for another alteration. This is not about the dress. Sophia stepped off the platform and crossed to the table, where the financing annex lay beneath a folder of press schedules. She had read it through the night. Every page used the language of rescue, emergency liquidity, stabilization authority, temporary voting protection. The words changed beside the debt conversion clause. Victor did not need the marriage to save the De Carvalho Port Company. He needed it to place the company within reach of the Vong family trust. Once the wedding was complete, he could call the short-term loans, convert the debt into shares, and appoint an emergency director. Her father believed the alliance would preserve their name. Victor intended to keep the name and remove the family. Sophia's mother stood. Your father signed because the port cannot survive another quarter without capital. The port may survive. We will not. You are being dramatic. Sophia turned the annex toward her. Read the conversion language. I have lawyers for that. Victor has the same lawyers. The room became quiet. One seamstress lowered her hands. The other looked at the floor. Sophia's mother read the paragraph. Her expression narrowed. Where did you get this copy? From father's office. You had no right. That is what people say when the document is more dangerous than the person reading it. Her mother closed the folder. What do you intend to do? Sophia looked at the unfinished dress reflected in the mirror. Find out how much of our company he has already taken. She changed into a dark suit and left through the service elevator. The engagement dress remained on the platform without a body inside it. At the port headquarters, senior officers stood empty. Executives had gone to emergency meetings, and junior staff spoke quietly about falling shares and possible layoffs. Sophia entered the finance archive using her father's access code. She searched for every loan linked to the Vong family trust. The first two appeared in board records. The third did not. It had been routed through a logistics subsidiary, registered elsewhere. The interest rate increased if the engagement was delayed. A hidden side letter gave Victor the right to purchase the debt before any outside lender intervened. Sophia opened the email history. One deleted message remained inside the server backup. After the marriage announcement, initiate conversion. Damian's position will be ceremonial by then. The port board can be replaced within 30 days. The message came from Victor's private office. Sophia forwarded the file to an encrypted address Matteo had used during an earlier licensing review. He called within a minute. "Where are you?" "At the port. Do not use the company network again." "I found Victor's plan." The server alerted his security team when the archive opened. Sophia looked through the glass wall. 2 men had entered the corridor. "What do you need?" she asked. Everything proving the debt was designed for conversion. Emails, annexes, notes, approval chains. "And what do I get?" A pause. "The truth. That has not protected anyone." "No," Matteo said, "but this time it will exist outside his system." Sophia copied the files to a portable drive. The men moved closer. She slipped the drive beneath her handbag lining and opened another folder before they entered. "Mr. Carvalho," one said, "the executive archive is restricted." She looked at him. "This is my family's company. We were told to escort you to the boardroom." "By my father?" "By Mr. Victor Vong." That answer was enough. Sophia walked with them until the elevator opened. She stepped inside alone and pressed the ground floor button before either man could follow. One reached for the doors, but they closed and forced him back. Matteo's car waited beside the loading entrance. He drove them to an old notary office near the cathedral district. Damian and Amara were inside with an independent investigator. On the table lay copies of the trust addendum, warehouse records, and damaged authorization logs. Amara looked at Sophia's handbag. "You brought something." Sophia removed the drive. Victor planned to take the port after the wedding. He also intended to reduce Damian to a ceremonial chairman. Damian did not touch it. "Does your father know?" "He knows enough to be afraid, and not enough to admit he was wrong." Matteo connected the files to an isolated computer. The email chain opened beside the trust records. Dates aligned. Financing approvals appeared within hours of Victor's requests to alter voting access. The investigator leaned closer. "This establishes motive, not the document substitution," Damian said. A door opened behind them. An elderly man entered carrying a leather case. His hands shook as he placed it on the table. Matteo introduced him as the former clerk of the notary who had certified the founder's final addendum. The clerk removed a bound paper ledger. "I kept this after the office closed," he said. "I was told the family copy had been corrected." Amara looked at him. "Corrected by whom?" The clerk's eyes moved toward Damian. "Victor Vong." He opened the ledger to a page bearing the founder's signature, the deposit date, and the serial number of the original addendum. Another notation recorded delivery of the original to the family archive. The archive director had signed for it. The same director who now claimed the envelope had never existed. Matteo added the ledger to the evidence list. Damian's phone rang. Victor's name appeared. Damian answered. "The board will meet tonight," Victor said. "You will attend and confirm the engagement. If you refuse, the trust will remove you before midnight." Damian looked at Sophia. She removed the engagement ring and placed it on the table. Damian understood. "The engagement is cancelled," he said. The room remained silent as the choice settled between them. Victor was silent. "You will lose the company." "Then it was never mine." Damian ended the call. No one celebrated. The evidence was incomplete. The original addendum was missing. Victor still controlled enough votes to remove Damian before the audit could freeze the trust. Sophia looked at the ring beneath the office light. For the first time, it resembled what it had always been. Collateral. Matteo checked his phone. The meeting has been moved forward, he said. Victor has called every director to the casino. When? Amara asked. Matteo looked at Damian. Now. Damian closed the evidence case. Outside, the first casino lights came on across Macau. This time, he was not going there to protect the empire. He was going there to tell the truth before the empire could vote him out. The boardroom overlooked the main gaming floor. Through the glass wall, hundreds of people moved beneath chandeliers, while cards turned, wheels spun, and money changed hands in silence. Inside the room, every chair was occupied. Victor stood at the head of the table. Damian entered with Matteo, Sophia, Amara, and the independent investigator. Conversation stopped in stages. One director lowered his pen. Another closed a tablet. The archive director kept both hands flat on the table. Victor looked at Amara first. That woman has no standing here. The investigator placed his credentials beside the evidence case. She does now. Victor's eyes moved to Damian. You brought an accused employee into a shareholder meeting. Damian took the empty chair opposite him but did not sit. I brought the person your system accused. A screen behind Victor displayed the proposed vote. Removal of Damian Vong as chairman. Temporary consolidation of executive authority under the family trust. Victor touched the remote. The company is losing value by the minute. Sophia placed her engagement ring on the table. The sound was small. Every face turned toward it. The engagement is cancelled, she said. Victor's confidence narrowed. Your father signed a binding agreement. He signed a financing structure you designed to seize his company. Victor looked at her. This is not the place for family emotion. No, Sophia said. It is the place where you hid it inside debt. Matteo connected the evidence drive to the boardroom system. The first email appeared on the screen. Victor's private office had instructed the trust to purchase De Carvalho debt after the marriage announcement. An email can be fabricated, Victor said. The investigator opened the server verification report. The message was recovered from 3 independent backups. The routing signatures match your office. Victor's hand tightened around the remote. It concerns lawful financing. It has nothing to do with succession. Damian finally sat. That is why we will begin with the will. Victor's lawyer placed a sealed document on the table. The family crest had been pressed into red wax. The original addendum, he said. It confirms Mr. Victor Vong's authority over the trust until the chairman completes a recognized marriage. Amara watched the seal. May I see the paper? The lawyer gave a short laugh. You are not an officer of this company. She is the auditor who noticed it was false, Damian said. The investigator opened the envelope under 2 cameras and placed the addendum beneath a document lamp. Amara did not touch it. She looked at the watermark first, then the notary address, then the fibers along the cut edge. The paper was manufactured after the founder died. Victor leaned back. That is an opinion. The investigator displayed the manufacturer's report. The batch number showed the paper had entered commercial circulation 6 weeks after the date beside the signature. Several directors had seen the document before. None had asked the question. Victor began again. The family received replacement stationery after archival damage. Amara looked toward the former notary clerk. He stepped forward with the bound ledger. No replacement was certified by my office. His voice shook, but he did not lower it. He opened the ledger to the founder's deposit entry. The serial number differed from the number on Victor's document. I delivered the certified original to the family archive. The archive director signed for it. Everyone looked toward the man with both hands on the table. The archive director's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Victor turned toward him. Be careful. The warning was quiet. That was the moment the man changed. I was told the original needed correction. By whom? The investigator asked. The archive director looked at Victor. By him. Victor's lawyer stood. This meeting is adjourned. No, Damian said. He had not raised his voice, but no one moved toward the door. Matteo replaced the ledger image with corridor footage from 5 years earlier. Victor entered Damian's office with the head of security. Minutes later, Amara's suspension order was approved. The timestamp appeared beside Damian's travel record from Singapore. "We had authorization to protect the company," Victor said. "You used my office," Damian replied. "You were unavailable. You forged my approval. I prevented a scandal." Amara looked at him across the table. "You created one." Victor faced the directors again. This woman copied confidential files and accepted offshore funds. Matteo opened the transfer history. The offshore account had been created from a terminal controlled by Victor's administrator. The same code had erased Amara's employment records and intercepted her correspondence. Then, Matteo displayed the letters, scanned envelopes, courier logs, internal routing notices. One image showed Amara's handwriting. Another showed Damian's. 5 years of messages diverted through the same office. Matteo spoke without looking away from the screen. "I saw irregularities at the time. I chose not to investigate them. My silence helped this happen." No one offered him comfort. Victor reached for the remote, but the screen changed again. The warehouse camera showed 2 men cutting the seal from the table's 17 storage room. Payment records connected them to the family security budget. The investigator placed the certified copy of the true addendum beside the false one. The successor clause is active. Independent audit is mandatory. Victor Vong's trust authority is suspended pending criminal review. Victor's face lost color. He adjusted one cuff. "You cannot suspend the trust without the original." Sophia pushed the notary ledger forward. "The original existed," Amara added, "and your own filing recognized the heir who activated the clause." Victor looked at Damian. "You would destroy this company for a woman who disappeared." Damian looked toward Amara. "She did not disappear. We removed every safe way for her to remain." The vote remained on the screen. Damian reached for the control panel. "I am withdrawing my authority until the audit is complete." Several directors reacted at once. Victor stared at him. "Then you lose everything." Damian pressed confirm. "My son is not collateral." The board secretary recorded the withdrawal. Sophia withdrew the De Carvalho votes from the Trust Alliance. 2 independent directors followed, then a third. Victor's majority vanished one name at a time. Security entered only after the vote was complete. They did not drag him away. They asked for his access card. Victor held it for several seconds before placing it on the table beside Sophia's ring. The investigator sealed the evidence cases. Outside the glass wall, the casino continued operating. Below them, a dealer gathered abandoned cards and began another hand, as if nothing above had changed. No one applauded. Damian walked to Amara after the room had begun to empty. "The court petition will be withdrawn," he said. "That protects Eli from Victor." "Yes. It does not repair what happened." "I know." She waited for a promise large enough to become another form of pressure. He made none. Across the room, Matteo removed his own company badge and placed it beside the evidence log. Amara looked toward the glass, where the gaming floor shone beneath its endless lights. For the first time, the Empire had told the truth about what it had done. She still did not know whether truth was enough to build a family. 3 months after the board meeting, the lights of Vong Meridian still came on. The casino did not close. The harbor did not stop. Dealers continued to shuffle cards. Cargo moved through the port, and tourists still arrived believing money could make every room forget what had happened there. But the system had changed. The family trust no longer answered to one relative. its voting authority passed to an independent council with outside legal, labor, audit, and child welfare representatives. Every succession document was copied to an external notary archive. Every executive approval required 2 separate authentication records. The old internal security office was dissolved. The whistleblower channel no longer reported to the people named in the complaint. Amara insisted on that clause. She did not return as an employee of Damian's company. She accepted a seat on the Oversight Council to review trust transactions and challenge any decision involving custody, inheritance, or settlements. Her first act was not about herself. She reopened 6 cases involving former employees accused of financial misconduct under Victor's administration. 2 had lost their licenses, 1 had left Macau, another had died before his name was cleared. The council published every correction. No one called it generosity, it was repair. Mateo testified before the investigators and resigned. He expected to disappear quietly after that. Amara opposed it. "You do not get to leave the work to cleaner people," she told him. So Mateo stayed as a witness coordinator. His office had no executive elevator, private driver, or access to family voting records. He spent his days helping former employees recover files that his silence had once allowed others to bury. He did not complain again. Sophia took control of the port company after her father stepped down. She cancelled the trust loans, brought in financing, and placed employee protections inside every future merger agreement. The engagement dress was returned unfinished. The ring remained sealed as evidence. Sophia never asked for it back. Victor was charged with fraud, evidence tampering, unlawful surveillance, and conspiracy to interfere with a custody proceeding. He denied every charge. He blamed advisors, clerks, and security officers. He never admitted that his idea of family had treated people as assets. The system moved forward without his admission. Damian did not return to the chairman's office. He accepted a smaller role during the audit and gave up the right to vote on matters involving Eli or Amara. The decision confused directors who still believed power mattered most when it was kept. He spent 2 afternoons each week with his son. At first, those afternoons were supervised. Damian arrived early and waited outside the Clinic Foundation apartment until Amara opened the door. He did not send gifts. He did not bring security. He did not ask Eli to call him anything. The first week, they built a model crane from thin wooden pieces. Damian placed one support backward. Eli studied it, turned the silver chip 3 times and said, "You did not check every side." Damian removed the piece and began again. The second week, they walked along the harbor and watched cargo containers rise above the water. Damian explained what he knew. Eli corrected what he had learned from workers near the repair shop. By the 4th week, Eli stopped sitting closest to the door. By the 6th, he asked Damian whether he had ever been afraid of his own family. Damian answered honestly, "Yes." "Why did you stay?" "I thought leaving meant losing." Eli looked at the water. "Mum left and still lost things." "I know, but she kept me." Damian lowered his eyes. "She did." Amara watched them from a bench. She did not mistake patience for forgiveness. She did not confuse regret with change. But she saw Damian listen when Eli spoke. That mattered. Winter came softly to Macau. The air cooled, and rain stopped gathering inside the apartment walls. Amara moved with Eli into a small house near the sea, far enough from the casinos that their lights appeared as a pale glow across the water. Damian did not buy the house. The Oversight Council arranged compensation for the years Amara had lost her profession, and she used part of it for the deposit. She accepted the money because it was not a gift. It was an acknowledgement of harm. One evening, Damian arrived carrying the model crane in both hands. Eli met him at the door and pulled him inside before Amara could speak. On the kitchen table lay a drawing. 3 figures stood beside the harbor. One was Amara, one was Eli. The third wore a dark coat and had been drawn several inches away from the others. Damian looked at the space between them. Eli placed the cracked silver chip beside the picture. "Do you want it back?" he asked. Damian touched the table, not the chip. "No. It came from your casino. It stopped belonging to the casino a long time ago." Eli considered that. Then he slid the chip into a small wooden frame beside the drawing. The cracked edge caught the kitchen light, but the number no longer looked like a table marker or a trust code. It looked like something that had survived being discarded. Outside, the sea moved quietly beyond the windows. The casinos continued to shine across the water. Inside the house, no one was watching them.